There are more than 100 unique styles of beer, each with their own set of ingredients, process, guidelines, history, and experience. If you're a beer lover, an industry leader, or somewhere in between, a better knowledge of beer style will improve your life and your work.
Welcome to A Sense of Beer Style, essential beer style training for those who want to lead in food and beverage. I'm Julia Herz.
And I'm Jeremy Storton.
We're advanced Cicerones, beer judges, home brewers, and we're excited to guide you through the vast and wonderful world of beer styles.
Well, today we are going to add another Prepisode to our list because we realize this is really important when we're talking about Irish stouts in particular, but several other styles that are commonly found on Nitro. So today we're going to talk about Nitro, what it is, the technology behind it, and how what the experience is like. And Julia, you just recently went to a Nitro Fest. How prolific is Nitro?
Nitro meaning nitrogen gas compared to CO2 or carbon dioxide, and frankly, working in concert with CO2 for a multitude of beer brands and styles nowadays is becoming more common. It's certainly the most common from stouts. That's what I saw at Nitro Fest in Denver last week, put on by Left Hand, who's very prolific and known for their milk stout, which is commonly enjoyed as a nitrogenated beer. So Guinness isn't the only game in town here, although they're the ones that created it. And so it is becoming more and more common, but stouts tend to be where we started with that effect to mimic cask ale. And it's really a great baseline of where to start if you want to know the effect of nitrogenated process on any beer style.
The thing about the nitrogen gas, most of us have had them, particularly with an Irish stout, with any stout, with other different styles. Sometimes it works with the beer, sometimes it doesn't. But what Nitro is essentially is it's a different gas blend. And every blend is going to be a little bit different, but just for the sake of quick conversation, it's going to be 30% nitrogen and 70% carbon dioxide going into like a Guinness, for example. But what it is that nitrogen has that smaller bubble, a creamier experience. And this technology was really invented by the Guinness company back in the 1950s as a means to mimic that cask ale experience.
Yes.
But of course, right? But that cask, you can't really transfer casks out to the market as easily. So they found a way to...
If people don't know, we should share. It's a classic English UK area of the world version of how to serve beer in the old era and still practiced today in many countries. It's a hand pump almost system with very little carbonation or carbon dioxide. Really not a lot of push pressure, carbon dioxide pushing the beer on draft out into your glass from that cask or that vessel. And virtue of that means that the beer is a lot less carbonated, volumes of CO2 are less than your standard CO2 style draft beers.
But you get this, but the cask ale, just by the nature of the way it came out, it was just had a creamier mouthfeel, had a creamier experience. And so by using nitrogen to create that same experience, but be able to send it out anywhere in the world, is a way to kind of give us a similar experience, but it still is very creamy, smooth in texture. If there are any quote unquote rough edges in the beer, this kind of like smooths out those rough edges, and beers on Nitro are just fantastic.
Yeah, they're less bitey, they're less sharp, they're less crisp than your classic CO2 or carbon dioxide carbonated beers, even though nitrogenated beers, as Jeremy said, in the mix have nitrogen as well as carbon dioxide. But they're just less sharp, they're more creamy, I love that description, a lot more silky and sultry on the palate, and they're delightful.
But they don't work with every beer, though, because there are some beers where you want that crispness. You want that sharp hop to come through. And Nitro, again, smooths those edges out. But if it's one of those beers you want the edges, then it doesn't work quite as well.
It's fascinating. I just went to Left Hand Brewing Company's Nitrogen Fest in the United States in Denver, Colorado 2 weeks ago. And so this was 40 breweries, and it was globally represented, breweries from all over the world, mostly US, but a lot of breweries that they got from out of the States were from Ireland, England. They had a few from South America, though, which was certainly exciting. And one of the most
awesome.
It was really cool, right? Like, I mean, invention and innovation for beer is global. Yet the countries represented mostly weren't a surprise. And I was on the hunt to see what was the trend. And the majority of beers at Nitrogen Fest were stouts, right? They weren't just classic sweet stout that Left Hand is so known for, or their kind of oatmeal sweet stout version of the beer that they make, or the Guinness style that we're going to talk about today as an Irish stout. We had a lot of Irish red ales on Nitrogen. I had a barley one on Nitrogen. I had a ESB on Nitrogen. I had a couple sour ales on Nitrogen, a couple imperial hopped up ales. And I'm here to say that you're right, Jeremy. The Nitrogen effect did not work for all styles universally. I think there's a reason they work for stouts, not just because we were all kind of cut our teeth on that, but because of the dark roasted, flavorful nature of most stouts. I think that having it with a little less CO2 and that soft, creamy feel elicits things like chocolate chip cookies or kind of mousse pie, right? Like a chocolate mousse pie or chocolate pudding. I like those things, and I don't want them to be sharp, bitey, dry, and refreshing. So they did mostly work best when I was served the stouts.
Yeah. And it's fun though, because, when they put this beer into the keg, then they have a different gas blend. And so that's why you have a different faucet for nitro beers to help disperse all that nitrogen. Now the thing, can we talk physics real quick, Julia?
Please do.
Because I think this is good. So you have this gas blend. Most beers that you get are going to be 100% carbon dioxide. But with these beers, with the gas blend that we mentioned, the 3070 or whatever it may be for that particular beer, the carbon dioxide is soluble in the liquid, and it will stay there. And if you open up a can of soda, take a sip, put it in the fridge, and leave it there overnight, the next morning it's still going to be pretty carbonated. If you do that with nitrogen releases from liquid almost immediately, and so they put it through those nitro taps and it has almost like it's a sparkler, but it's almost like a reverse shower head that breaks everything up, and it allows that nitrogen to disperse. And that's where you see that cascading foam within the liquid. And it's so fun to just sit there and watch your beer settle. But in order to do that, they have to put that gas blend into the kegs. They can also put that gas blend into bottles as well for the most part. But in cans, they have to use a little thing called a widget. And widget is kind of a generic term, but in this case, it's a very specific term, and it's called a widget. And I've seen a few different ones, but I pulled one out of a Guinness can for the sake of, in the name of science, Julia.
In the name of science.
The name of science, right? So this little thing right here, for those of you who are watching, you can see what looks like a small ping pong ball in my hand. For those of you listening, it's a small ping pong ball in my hand, but it's much harder, and there are tiny holes in this thing as well. And the way that this works for our cans is that nitrogen slowly infuses inside this ball over time, and when the can is opened, it releases immediately, but it takes time for that nitrogen to come out of this ball. So there's kind of an initial crack, and then there's a secondary fizz, and then there's just a continuing cascade of nitrogen coming out of this little ball. So that's how in a can you can pour it into your glass and you still get that nitro effect. And it's a very simple, ingenious machine to deliver that experience.
And proprietary technology that other breweries have now riffed on and created their own version, so they too can service you nitrogen in a can or from their bottles. But it's fascinating to see that if anyone's ever gone to a sushi restaurant and your kids get the soda where there's kind of a ball in the middle neck of the bottle and you push the ball down with the lid and then the soda explodes with carbonation, that's a burst of CO2, not nitrogen, but it's certainly the same effect. And so invention can come from anywhere, so can innovation. But it is truly one of the main ingredients of this style, has become what Jeremy is pointing out in the nitrogenated addition to the beer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for listening to A Sense of Beer Style, the essential beer style training for those who want to lead in food and beverage. With advanced Cicerones, me, Julia,
and me, Jeremy.
Tune into the next episode as we continue exploring the world of beer styles and what to make of them. We encourage you to listen to the Prepisodes to build your foundation and better understand beer styles.
And before the next episode, I'd like to ask you to review the show and let us know what you'd like featured in upcoming episodes. Until next time, here's to you and your sense of beer style. Thank you for listening. Cheers.